Looks like we're at 50 or thereabouts. So I wonder, should I schedule it for 12:45 or will then people show up at 12:30? I don't know. So here we are. It's a Tuesday, Wednesday. What day is today? I don't even know. So Pollo Loco says hello. Hello to you, my friend, Crazy Chicken. I believe that's what that means. Johnny Knoxville points out I've got my Gatorade and my keyboard in hand, and the Gatorade is in fact here, and it is in the 101.7 The Wall Shut Up and Rock drinking device. Alex Parker checking in from West Virginia, part of the country I've never been to, but I've heard quite a bit about it. Jerry C. Hello, Steve. It's Tuesday. You know, you're right. This week is Tuesday, Thursday. Next week is Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I can't keep this stuff straight. Sorry about that. The plebiscite says, hi, Steve. Good evening from the UK. Thanks for checking in from overseas, my friend. I always appreciate that. Tuckahoe 1918 checking in from Williamsburg, Virginia. I can buy seeds, but I still can't buy toilet paper. Fry TV. Hello, Steve. And you very nicely gave me a pronouncer. I appreciate that. When I worked in radio, you'd get news off the AP wire, and it came off this continuous roll of gray paper, and you'd rip it, and you'd run into the studio and read it, hence the term rip and read. And if you were reading a news story and had a really funny name, right next to it would be a pronouncer. So you'd know how to pronounce, like Lech Wałęsa instead of, Lech Walesa. And so without that pronouncer, I get confused, but with it, I'm pretty good. So Jerry C. checking in from Muncie, Indiana, as usual. And I appreciate that, especially my usual check-ins. Fuse on 20. Hey, Steve. Stephen Baines. Hi, Steve, here in Phoenix. Always look forward to these. Thank you, sir. I've also seen you commenting on some of my my videos, also on the email. I appreciate that very much. I've been getting, as you might imagine, quite a bit of flack because I've been talking about the executive orders here in Michigan. People assume that I'm defending somebody when all I'm doing is just explaining how an executive order works. Lee Maynard, Steve, hello from England again. Thank you for checking in. Song Yardbird, hey dude. We're all cool here. NASCAR 2428, Burton, Michigan. Really? Burton, Michigan. I worked at WTRX Flint, and at the time I worked there, the studio and transmitter were in Burton, Michigan. And I didn't live in Burton at the time, but I drove in to do my radio show. And at the time, Johnny Burke was the morning man at WTRX, and he used to just rip on Burton endlessly because it's a suburb of Flint. But the reason that the studio was there is simply because the transmitter towers were out back. And in fact, the station is still on the air, but the studios are elsewhere in Flint. But they still use the building for the transmitter, and the towers are still out back. And it's kind of sad. I drove by, and the building that the studios were in has been leveled, but they saved a little tiny bit of the building. That's where the transmitter is and was when I was there. So I know quite a bit about Burton. Coiled Steel, Steve, do we have any rights if stopped on our way to do things these days? You've got all the same rights you've always had. You've got all the same rights you've always had. The Constitution has not been suspended. You've got all your rights. The only question is, are you breaking any different laws that we didn't have before? So that's what you got to look for. Once again, it's jumping ahead of me. I thought I saw a good question here. Zafar Syed says, hey, Steve, starting earlier and earlier, listening to you while cleaning the backyard while it's snowing in Chicago suburbs. Oh, my God. I'm so sorry, my friend. I actually saw some very, very isolated snowflakes in the air yesterday evening, just one or two. And it was almost like, is somebody burning something? Maybe that's falling ash. It was actually snowflakes, but no noticeable amount of snow. But, that's one of the beauties of living in the Midwest is that you never know what you're going to get. Jeff, hi, Steve from Sheboygan. He spells it with the S-H, which of course means he's in Wisconsin. We've got a town called Sheboygan here in Michigan, spelled C-H. M-R-RWS 1982. Hi, Steve, checking in from the Atlanta area. Thank you for checking in. I've been to Atlanta many times, of course, changing planes. Been to Atlanta a couple times on business, and then driven through Atlanta a couple times as well. Funny thing about it is driving to Florida from Michigan, Atlanta, seems like you traveled quite a good distance. And then when you got to go from Atlanta to, say, Key West, it's still a hike. So Michael Mize checking in from El Dorado, Kansas. I wonder if it's named after the mythical Spanish imaginary town, or is it named after a car? No, I'm just joking. Nico Pesla, darn, I'm late. Hello. No, we started early. We always do that. I appreciate that, though. Robbins, Steven, 60. Steve R. checking in from Des Moines, Iowa. Thank you for checking in. I appreciate that. Johnny Knoxville says, I broke out my chainsaw in case I have a home invasion for my toilet paper. I did the video that went up this morning about the guy in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan in a town called South Range who faced 2 home invaders. And when they pulled a knife on him, he pulled a chainsaw on them. And that's in the news. We don't have much more than that, but it raises several questions, not the least of which is, was the man sleeping in a bedroom where he had the chainsaw nearby, or did he go grab the chainsaw and bring it out? And I like to imagine a guy in South Range laying in bed, sound asleep, dreaming of happier times with a big old chainsaw next to his bed, just keeping him company, keeping him safe. But you have to admit it would have been a better story if he'd gotten to use it, other than just threatening him with it. But he did, in fact, break out the chainsaw in self-defense, and that made the news. So I appreciate that. Hey, CEM, is that Kem Walker? First time catching alive. Well, I'm glad you're here, my friend. I appreciate that. Thanks for checking in. Stephen Baines has a quote, facts are too busy being true to care about how you feel about them. It's unfortunate because some people actually do get so invested in an idea that when they find out it's not true, they'll defend it anyway. And one of the craziest stories going around right now is that it is illegal. It is illegal in Michigan to buy an American flag. And it's not. It's just something somebody made up, and it's gotten traction. And so they actually had to put a frequently asked question and answer on the state government website saying, question, can I still buy an American flag? Answer, yes. CEM Walker says, it sounds like El Dorado. Is that really true? I do like it when towns have got a funny pronunciation that they insist everyone use. And I pointed out before, I lived in Eau Claire, and the people of Eau Claire, Michigan say, no, it's Eau Claire. And there's, of course, a town in Michigan that looks a lot like Charlotte, North Carolina, but they call it Charlotte, Michigan. Charlotte. William Burnett. Hi, Steve. My son gave me a book, The Great American Jetpack, from Mishawaka, Indiana. Well, yeah, The Great American Jetpack's a book I don't talk about a whole lot because it doesn't necessarily tie in with stuff we do here. But I wrote a book on the history of the personal individual lift device. The idea that you could strap something to your back, go up front, and just take off into the sky. Jetpacks, rocket belts, or other things. And we're actually getting close to that now because of the fact that they've got smaller and smaller turbine engines and good controllers and so on. And I've seen some guys who've made some decent ones. The only thing that really limits them is primarily the length of flight time. So I wrote a whole book on it, though. It's actually a fascinating topic. Jay Kavanaugh says there's Cairo, Illinois. Is that how they pronounce it? Because I in my mind, I look at it and say, it's obviously Cairo. But of course, Cairo is the Egyptian pronunciation. Hike Hunter says, Steve, I bought paint this morning for the master bath. Good. Here in Colorado, Louisville is pronounced Louisville, MH08. Yeah, Louisville's one that confuses a lot of people because that silent S, which of course comes from the French, I believe. They had a King Louis. And to us, that sounds so casual, King Louis. But the final consonant, of course, is silent. Jeff, I hope Jay Leno gets one of those. A jetpack? Yeah, I'm not sure if he'd be up for it. He likes driving cars and motorcycles, but I'm not sure he wants to get his feet off the ground. The Canadian robot lady is checked in, and she's in the room. That's her with the maple leaf in her icon. and calling herself a Canadian robot lady. I will tell you, speaking of the maple leaf, that I finally got at my office the last batch of maple syrup. I now have, I believe, 6 different kinds of maple syrup. Sometime towards the end of this week, I'll do the great maple syrup taste off, which at this point, the buildup has been much, much more than the show could possibly be. I may have to just invent stuff to make it more interesting, or fireworks or something. Song Yardbird says, I live in Elyria, Ohio. I have no idea how you pronounce that. I'm guessing. Robert Odell, finally. Jeopardy 4100 says that Houghton is pronounced Houghton in Arizona. And that very well could be. And I've heard people say that, when they see it in Michigan. But there's a man named Houghton, Douglas Houghton, and that's the accepted pronunciation of his last name. And the town and the county of Michigan are named after him, and everyone says Houghton. But things can take on a different meaning. Tina Burgess says, what's the correct pronunciation of Lahser? And that is a street name in Michigan, Lahser Road. And a lot of people will say Lasher, but HS is not SH. I mean, the letters are, she spelled it correctly there. So it's Lahser Road. And I know that because it goes right near where I used to live. And that was one of those things, 99% of the people called it Lahser. And 1% would go, oh, over there on Lasher. Lee Maynard says, you should call it the Great Maple Syrup Marathon. You know what I could do is I could just bring it in here and just down shots. We could pick some event and say every time Steve says such and such, he gets to down a shot of maple syrup. The thing is, I won't get drunk. I would just get buzzed from all the sugar, I'm assuming. Hammond Egger says, do the taste off live. I could do that. I remember because I brought the toaster in the other day. I could do that. I'm just not sure how fun that would be. But if you have comments on that, please weigh in and let me know. Do it live or make it a pre-produced piece. I don't care one way or the other. The live things are just the same amount of work for me as the produced ones are. So I won't say which one's harder because, quite frankly, neither of them are that hard to do. Jason Tapa, can you please explain what the gold fringe around the flag is? Referring to that gold fringed flag there. American flags, generally speaking, you've got the stripes and then the field that's blue with the white stars in it. And if you hang it on a wall, that's what you see. And if you hang it on a staff, especially indoors, they often put a ceremonial fringe around the flag. It has absolutely no meaning whatsoever. And people will often claim that the presence of that flag changes the nature of a courtroom, for instance. But I'm here to tell you that, number one, courtrooms use those flags, but so do most government offices. And in fact, if you look at photographs of the Oval Office in the White House, they use a ceremonial flag. That's all it is. It's a ceremonial fringe for when the flag is not mounted on a wall. That is all. Lee Maynard, do you like eating honey? Now, if you put a comma in there, it would say, do you like eating honey? Just joking. But I've had it, but I can't say that I spend a lot of time dealing with it. A friend of mine is a beekeeper, Dwayne Beeman, but I'm not a big consumer of honey in that respect. Yeah. TF Cooks says that it's flag bling. That's basically all it is. It's just it's a display flag, and they put that around the sides. And I think it's designed to keep the flag looking a little more respectable, even when it's hanging on a pole. Because if you put it on a pole like that and it's just hanging down, it's not as impressive as it is when it's mounted on a wall. That's all it is. That's all it is. So, Clint Richardson, why did the White House remove the presidential seal? Did they? I don't know. If they did, I would assume you would understand that the White House is run by the man who's speaking at that podium. And so if he wanted it there, he could put it there. So Tom Holt, Tupelo Honey is the best, of course. One of the many songs by Van Morrison, better than Brown Eyed Girl. And we're not going on that tangent today. Douglas Brown, greetings from Little Rock, Arkansas. What did I miss? Well, The earth cooled, then there were the dinosaurs. It's an airplane joke. Daniel Kester, Steve, makes me think of Flag Day, which is coming up. When is Flag Day coming up? I mean, I know it's a holiday, but it's like Arbor Day. I mean, Jerome DeJong, Steve, hello from Edmonton, AB, Canada, Alberta. What lawsuits do you see coming from this recent events in the news? And, that's an interesting question because there's going to be a lot of things that happened. And when the dust settles and things get back to work, for instance, there will be people who won't get hired back. And the question is, I mean, they can go on unemployment, but are they going to be able to claim that they were like wrongfully discharged or something? You're going to see probably some of that stuff. You're also probably going to see a lot of contract actions, lawsuits over unpaid money. So, for instance, if you didn't pay your rent in April, okay, the landlord was entitled to his rent by law, technically. And so if they said, well, you don't have to pay your rent, well, somebody's got to pay it, you'd think, right? And so if there is not, like, say, relief money from the government to make up that lost rent, you're going to see a lot of landlords suing tenants going, hey, look, I understand that they didn't pay it then, but they got to pay it now. So I think you're going to see a lot of those kinds of actions, mostly piddly stuff, though, little stuff. In other words, I'm not saying that's a small case. I'm saying a lot of those kinds of cases that won't make the news. Okay. The news will be that there's so many of those cases filed. I think that's what I'm expecting, but I could be completely wrong on that because we have to see what happens. 101 Saber, Steve, did you watch the video on the Viper I sent you? If you're talking about sending a link, not yet. If you're talking about a DVD, someone did send me a very nice DVD about the making of the Viper. I did watch. So Chevy Mustang is always the lawyers will get richer. That is, although an interesting point, not necessarily true because of the fact that right now many lawyers like me aren't at our offices and we ain't making money off of law. So any money we make then will be making up for the fact we're not making it now. Duncan Campbell, hello from Melbourne, Australia. Sorry I'm late. I was getting ice cream from a store, I would assume, right? That's the one thing. I'm a grown man in theory. And I will tell you that one of the things I still like to do, and it's because it brings back memories, I still like to go to ice cream stands. If I'm driving through some town out in the middle of nowhere and I'm not in a hurry and I see an ice cream stand by the side of the road, like a little seasonal ice cream, I will stop and get ice cream. I don't care. And I'll tell you right now that there's a great one on the Keweenaw Peninsula. It's an old train station, and the train tracks aren't there anymore, but somebody took the train station and converted it into an ice cream stand in the town of Mohawk. That is so cool. It's so cool. I stopped there. I've been driving by there when I wasn't hungry and I got ice cream. I've been driving by there, in the morning, the first meal of the day, ice cream. I don't care. I can't resist it. I love the little ice cream stands. I can't wait till they're open again. So, Johnny Knoxville, Steve loves McDonald's soft serve. Dude, I don't know if I've ever had it. I really, McDonald's does some things well, meaning that, like, if you go to a McDonald's anywhere in America and buy a Big Mac, you know what you're getting. It's going to be the same at every single one. I've never had the ice cream at McDonald's. I don't think I've ever had an apple pie from McDonald's. There's a whole bunch of stuff I've never had from McDonald's. I'm not a big junk food fan to begin with, but 90 knots ice cream is an absolute goodness. I agree wholeheartedly. Bob A. Bong checking in from sunny Benton Harbor, Michigan. Appreciate that, my friends. Ignatius J. Riley 2020. Dixie Champagne. Giving a shout out to Iggy. Oh, boy. Space Raptor says Ohio lawyers are advertising about, like, getting insurance companies to pay business interruptions. I wouldn't be surprised that there will be some categories like that where people are going to say that, yeah, we're expecting litigation in this field. But yeah, also to remember that there's not a lot of attorneys doing that kind of law. So it might help that little group of attorneys, but not all of them. Bill Taylor says that Rocky Road was created during the Depression to raise morale. I believe that. Coiled steel fosters freeze. There's all these dairy frees, there, of course, Dairy Queen's the one we all know, but Frosty freeze, Foster's freeze, Dairy freeze, whatever. And but like I said, you're driving down and you see an ice cream stand. Boom. Like I said. Matthew Shostrom, would you try the McDonald's chicken nuggets a second time? I should do that on camera. I have not had chicken nuggets since that happened. And he's referring, of course, to the story where I went to McDonald's, or I got McDonald's to eat while I was on the air in about 1983. 83 or 80, 82 or 83. I don't know the exact year. I have to ask my friend Keith. He was there. And I got food poisoning. And I called the McDonald's to tell him that. And I got the manager on the phone and I go, I want to let you know I just got McNuggets a couple hours ago and I got food poisoning. He goes, so what do you want me to do about it? So I just thought you should know. And he goes, okay, I know. And he hung up on me. So I have not had McNuggets since. So that's a long streak of no McNuggets. Okay. But it was a bad experience. I'm sure it was isolated, but it was one of those things. Though, it wasn't so much the sickness. I've been sick since then, but it was the fact that the guy said, okay, I know, and just hung up on me. That was the real insult to injury thing there. Oh boy. Yeah. See Perceptions Music says it's hard to sue over food poisoning. Yeah. Generally speaking, once in a while, you'll hear about an outbreak where, they'll actually say this place has an outbreak of E. coli where a whole bunch of people got sickened by it. And especially if the health department comes in and checks it out and verifies it, then you might see some ugly lawsuits. But simply trying to prove that, yeah, I got sick because I ate over here, that is going to be a tough one to prove, which is unfortunate because I've seen people file lawsuits where their injury and pain was less than what I went through with my food poisoning. But the only difference is my food poisoning bout lasted, 24 hours or 36 hours, whereas some of the injuries I've seen seem smaller but might last longer. Do you know what I mean? Matt Pritchard, Steve, about contract law. Anything to say about Ticketmaster saying they won't refund concert tickets for events postponed? Are they saying that they will then give you tickets for the new event when it comes up? Or are they saying they'll never give you your money back? Because I know that Ticketmaster and StubHub and a couple of the other ticket sellers and resellers ran into trouble because of concerts that got canceled. And at one point in time, I believe it was StubHub would say, if the concert gets canceled, we'll force the refund to work through the person that we brokered the deal with. And they actually said, we can't even do that anymore. And so I know that's caused a lot of consternation, as I like to say. Canadian Robot Lady just threw her vote behind the A&W root beer float. And it's kind of funny. We mentioned A&Ws before, and somebody mentioned that there was an A&W in Oakland County, Michigan, and Troy. And there used to be one on Rochester Road. And there are still some of those drive-ins around. But A&W is not what it used to be in terms of its presence. But of course, A&W root beer was best known for its root beer and its root beer floats, which, if you're known for something, if you get one good thing right, it can actually draw people in. That's why you gotta admire them for doing that. So Amy Jo says they used to give you a refund if you cannot make a rescheduled date, and that language is now off of the website. Yeah, that's a scary concept. So we'll see what happens. I'll stay on top of that and see. Robert Odell, we have an A&W in Monroe. Okay. Johnny Knoxville, my Little League baseball team was sponsored by A&W. Smart move, by the way. Hook 'em young. When I played baseball, I played Little League baseball in Birmingham I played Little League baseball from T-ball through the major leagues, which is the leagues that you see playing in the Little League World Series. And so up to the age of 12. And anybody in Birmingham, Michigan would know there's a park called Eaton Park, E-T-O-N, Eaton Park. And I played baseball at Eaton Park for several years. And these guys had a racket. There'd be a couple different good humor trucks. And they would, on nights of baseball games, just pull into the parking lot behind the Diamonds, and there'd be a line at the truck all night long. I mean, talk about shooting fish in a barrel. And the funny part was that after the games, most teams in the league I was in would go over and the whole team would get ice cream. That's like we'd play a game and then eat ice cream, then go home, you know? So, I mean, those guys, I mean, that's talk about a sweet deal for a good humor truck to know where to park. Jason Johnson, no sherbet fans. I'm not sure I ever understood what sherbet was or sherbet. Never understood it myself. Never quite tasted the same as the good old fashioned premium brands type of ice cream. So, Jeopardy 4100 gives us a shout out for the red light company. The red light camera company's going broke. And he's talking, of course, about the company out of Australia that's installed a lot of the red light cameras in America, has mentioned that due to the drop in traffic and the few people who are on the road now actually avoiding the red light cameras, that their income's dropping because their income is based on how many tickets they can issue. And they actually issued a statement to their shareholders not too long ago saying that the drop in income due to this is going to potentially, screw the company up. And I did the video and it's like, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Matthew Shostrom says, Steve, as a former McDonald's worker, I can say the nuggets are safe, mostly celery, but safe. Just don't get the grilled chicken. Okay. I've never eaten the grilled chicken at McDonald's either. I'll tell you right now, if I go to McDonald's, it's a burger, fries, and a Diet Coke. That's it. I don't go off that menu. My menu is that small. But yeah, I mean, a lot of fast food places make stuff that, I know it's allegedly good, but I just don't do it. MH08 asks the question, why is West St. Paul south of the city? Try to figure out the street names in Florida. It'll actually say West, Northeast, 162nd Avenue or something. It's like, what? They'll actually have contradictory directions in the same name, but sometimes I'm sure there's a reason for it. Canadian Robot Lady says that maple syrup is a great topping on vanilla ice cream. Okay, you understand what you just did? I think you just convinced me to buy about 15 gallons of premium ice cream, all vanilla, and try the maple syrup, because that's I mentioned last week. Somebody said, Steve, or last show, somebody said, Steve, do you have any vices? Anything that you can tell us about? And I said, well, I don't smoke and I don't drink. What do you do? I said, I eat too much chocolate and Diet Coke. And once in a while I go on these sprees where I'll start every time I go to the store and I see the premium ice cream aisle, I'll buy a thing or two of that. And I have to tell myself not to do that because I know it's not good for me. But now that I know that, it sounds like it does go together well. MH08 says there's logic behind the thing with St. Paul because the Mississippi River runs east and west through there, and West St. Paul is on the west side of the river because the river does eventually straighten out and basically go north-south. That's interesting, and I like that because I can tell you right now that like I-94, which goes across the bottom of Michigan and then curves up and goes up to Port Huron, there's a section of it where it's going basically north-south. And when you're coming towards it in the old days, it would say East 94 goes this way and West goes this way. And people get confused and go, wait, I don't want to go east. I want to go north or south. I think they've actually fixed some signs to indicate that. But, Bob A. Bong, ice cream party at Steve's. If this thing does go on too long, we should have some kind of get together. I know not everyone could be there, but I could do the live feed from someplace and the people who are within driving distance could come in. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here. Hauptmann 6. Is Stroh's ice cream still being made? I miss it from living on the east side of the state. I think it is, but I could be wrong. I haven't looked lately. I'd be curious about it. But yeah, Stroh's ice cream. People from Detroit, of course, know Stroh's beer. I know people in the rest of the country do as well, but Stroh's is a locally brewed thing here in Michigan. And Stroh's also makes ice cream. So, Stephen Baines claims he would fly in for a live show if we had an audience. Thunder God 97 says West Loop isn't in the loop, but it is west of the river in downtown Chicago. Yeah, that's the thing. You know, there's so many historic street names, and I love history, and I love local history, and I love learning street names and where the names come from and so on. And so you do discover really, really weird things like that, where some streets got a name because of something that used to be there or so on, or the logic behind it. You know, I sent a book to somebody the other day who lived on Sawmill Road, and I thought to myself, wow, I bet I know where the sawmill was about 100 years ago. So, Brianna CC, do you leave the house during lockdown? Every couple days, as an attorney, I've got to check my mail. So I can't afford to let my mail sit for too long just in case something in there explodes, figuratively speaking. So I do go to my office and also the post office just periodically. And I do shop when I'm getting low on food, but I try to limit that as much as I can. Dave Wooden asks, Steve, did you hear about the Supreme Court ruling? Law enforcement pulling vehicles over after running the plate number and finding the vehicle is registered to someone with a suspended license. Yes, I did a video on that about a week ago. I suspect you're mentioning it because Leonard French did a video on it this morning. And Leonard French and it's kind of funny. I watch his channel. He watches my channel. And occasionally I'll see a story that he just did that I did previously or vice versa. And if I see him do a video on a topic, I'll wait a little while before I do mine. So if you go through my listing of videos, you'll see a video. I forgot what it's called, but something to the effect of, can the police pull you over for an expired license plate, meaning, or not an expired, a suspended license. And the point is that the Supreme Court said, yes, they can. That is, it's not probable cause you've committed a crime, but it's a reasonable suspicion that you may have committed a crime. And that's the whole point, is that they were arguing about that definition. Lee Maynard says, if we had a party at Steve Leto's place, would it become a Michiganian madness party? I should trademark that. Dave Wooden, sorry I did not catch all of your videos. Hey, no problem. I put up 2 or 3 a day. I put up 3 yesterday. So if you can't keep up, join the club. I can barely keep up. I can tell you that there was a time when I used to go back and watch all my videos. Just I'd put it up and then I'd watch it. Make sure that, there's nothing weird about it or how it translated or rendered or whatever. I gave up on that a long time ago. I don't have that kind of time. SMO222, I have to move out of an apartment in a month. I live in Michigan. Is it legal to move back downstate? Yeah, if you're moving to another location, it'll become your permanent residence. That would not be a violation of the order as I understand it. And I do understand the order because I've got a 17-page copy of it right here. But it's illegal in Michigan, technically, to move between 2 residences that you own. But if you are leaving one and moving to another, that would not be described in that rule, so I wouldn't worry about it. And if you got a ticket for that, call me. I'll defend you for free if you're in Michigan. Oh, I meant to mention that the other day. I've not heard of many people getting ticketed for anything during this, during these troubled times we live in. And I've mentioned before that during the Woodward Dream Cruise a couple of years ago, I used to offer to represent anybody who got a ticket for free. And I would have to do so many tickets. It was crazy, but it was a good, fun thing to do. And it was also a publicity stunt. I got tons of free publicity. And I was thinking about making the offer to defend people who got in trouble during this lockdown. But then I realized, okay, number one, it'd be statewide, and it would involve a lot of traveling. And number two, these are misdemeanors. And so, in theory, these could be very serious trials. And if there's too many of them, I couldn't run around and do it myself. So I can't make that offer, at least not as a blanket offer. So Charles Broom, hello, Steve, tuning in from Rydell, Georgia. Never heard of the town, but I've been to Georgia, of course. Hearns Martins, do you watch Better Call Saul? No, I have not. I watched a few episodes of Breaking Bad, just didn't get into it, and I'd never watched Better Call Saul. I'm familiar with it, but I've not watched it. Pollo Loco, what if you have pets on another location? You need to get your pets at a location where you're at, ideally. But I've had people say that's one of the problems, is that there are people out there who've actually got 2 locations. They got pets at each location. That might be a little bit of a problem. Dave H., did you plant your garden yet? No, I got the seeds right here. And I actually spoke to somebody yesterday, and somebody caught me, sent me an email and said, hey, Steve, are you going to plant those seeds? And I said, no, I probably won't. And this friend of mine said, well, I have a garden, and I'd like to buy the seeds from you. And I said, well, I won't sell you the seeds because, in my opinion, I bought them as a lark. I don't care. I said, I'll send them to you as long as you send me photographs of them as they grow up. And so they promised they'll do that. So the seeds are going to go out in the mail probably tomorrow. They'll get planted. They'll live a long and successful life, and we'll follow their progress as they grow with updates from time to time. So Vixen DeFea, Steve, hello from Minnesota. Have you heard of Joe DiMaggio versus Joe DiMaggio's Sports Bar and Grill? No, I have not. I'll have to take a look at that. I can imagine what it's probably about. But the question is, did he ever consent to letting them use his name in the first place? And then if so, are they fighting over how they're using it? So, Stephen Baines, will you shake the seeds for us like you did in the video? Yeah, I can do that one more time. I think that in a multimedia setting, it's important to take advantage. So that's the basil. That's the oregano. This is the summer squash. This is the okra. And the forget-me-nots. So that's the sound of the seeds having been purchased in Michigan perfectly legally yesterday. Thank you for the suggestion. Clint Richardson, shake it, Steve. That's a phrase I probably never thought I'd see. Johnny Knoxville suggests Lato stock 2020 live at Kim's Creamery in Bad Axe, Michigan. Is that the name of the place in Bad Axe now? I'll have to check that out. I went through Bad Axe not last summer, but the summer before, would be 2018. I'm trying to remember. It's basically one intersection like this, and the road M53 comes up and then it jogs, and you could go straight this way or down this way towards Ubly. And I forgot if there's an ice cream store in that little section, or maybe an ice cream stand north of town. So we'll check that out. Jonathan Pretty, I love watching your videos when people try to tell you how wrong you are. Thank you. I also get complaints. People go, Steve, stop arguing with those people. You're never going to win. It's like, well, some people are curious. They'll say, I've wondered about that question myself. I'm glad you explained it. I've got a video going up tomorrow morning where I address the simple, direct question: what authority does the governor have to issue an executive order? And it's a question that people skip over by just saying, what she's done is illegal. It's unconstitutional. I can't believe she did that. And they never ask, well, does she have the authority? So Ron Hockhalter, what is the glass item in front of the flag beside the European license plate? Looks interesting. These two are identical, but they're radio tubes. This one here was actually sent to me by a listener, a viewer. And it's a tube from WSMA, which is a radio station up in the thumb of Michigan. And they're just old radio tubes from radio transmitters. And I just have them add them to the collection along with all the microphones up here. Yeah, dumb guy voice came out. What can I tell you? We are at 450 people in the room. In case you're curious, for instance, at the end of every video, when I put it up, a live feed, when I hit stop, it posts a metric for me to tell me how many people are in the room at one time. And it says, it'll say maximum number of concurrents or something like that. So last time, which would have been Sunday, I had 561 people in the room maximum, 561. I've gotten it over 800 once, but it's been a while. So for me, anything over 500, I consider very, very good, but we're at 450 right now, and that's fine. I do this as one person over here chatting with me. If no one is chatting, I think at that point, I kind of just like sneak out of here and turn off the camera. Oh, David Wooden, did you not cover the legality of the executive order in a video a couple weeks ago? I talked about it briefly, but I did not address the actual statute it comes from. And so I talk about that directly. Andrew Allen, didn't you beat 1,000? No. I've never gotten over 1,000. It was in the 800s. So, Brianna CC, reopening for business should be left to governors, not the president. Yeah, that's a political question, which I hate to address, but I will tell you that generally speaking, and this is going to cause some consternation among the political folks, but most of that authority does appear to rest with the states. And in fact, my constitutionalist friends will tell you that the 10th Amendment talks about rights reserved to the states, but we won't get into that. Digger 96, we could all meet you in hell for ice cream. Yeah, I believe there is an ice cream place in hell, and hell is a town near Pinckney in Michigan. C Perceptions Music, I saw 600 the other day, I thought. It may have broken 600. I thought it was 561, but I get them confused. I only remember that we almost always break 500. We've broken 800 once. It may have broken 6. I'm not sure. So, J. Paul, I'll chat with you, Steve. Pour your heart out, buddy. I always like to come on here and think of this something I've never done on a video that I can mention to you guys, because I understand there's an overlap, but there is a group of people who come here that are more active than the people who comment under my videos. And I think there's actually some people out there who just don't even know about the live streams or don't care. I don't even know how the live streams show up in the feed. I don't know about that. But so I'm always trying to think, like, is there some story I can tell or something I can add? So once in a while, I will come up with a story or something I can throw in here and say, look, I've never done a video on this, but I'll tell you guys. So we'll do that. Hearns Martins, who's your favorite Finnish hockey player? I apologize for not being able to pull it off the top of my head, but there are several Finnish goalies, and my Finns will be able to tell me on this. But there's also a goalie coach from Finland, and there's a really, really good article on the internet, and I forgot who wrote it, but there's a guy in Finland who specializes in teaching goalies how to be good goalies, and the guy is so good that he's got a bunch of his students into the NHL. And it's one of those things where if you look at the NHL and where the different players come from, there's a disproportionate number of Finnish goalies. Okay, at least there was. And that was because of this one guy who had this thing down about how to teach these goalies to be good. And I've always been fascinated by that. And I'm not going to get the quote perfect, but they were talking to a Finnish goalie in the interview about the coach, and they asked him, they go, what's the different mindset between being a goalie and being a player on the ice, just a regular player? Because there's 5 players out there on a goalie. So aren't you just playing hockey? And the goalie goes, no. He goes, my mistakes go up on the scoreboard. So. Science fiction, Kari Lehtinen. Looks like a Finnish name to me. So, Kit Marlowe Scott, did Mr. Leto change his mind and decide to do Monday instead of Tuesday? I thought today was Tuesday, isn't it? Don't mess with me. None your business. What's been your most controversial video? It's probably that, or it depends whether you consider controversy a legitimate controversy or the one that ticked people off the most. But yeah, I did the one called "You're a Sheep If You Shop at Walmart" or something like that, because my point is, if you don't like their policies, don't shop there. But people go like, I went there, I shopped, and then the guy asked to show me a receipt, and I said no, and I told that guy off. It's like, it's the guy's job, If you don't like that, don't shop there. So I said, you're a sheep if you still shop there and think like, I showed him, I yelled at the checkout guy. That got a lot of grief. But also the one I did about, what your rights are at the roadside. That's my number one video, but it's got a lot of feedback. And then I had to turn the comments into a moderated thing the other day when I was talking about, the executive order in Michigan, because so many people want to argue with reality and say that well, the executive order might not say that, but it really meant that or something. It's like, huh? So, oh boy. Song Yardbird, hey, do some DJ stuff. Like what? Get a couple of turntables and a microphone and start scratching? If you don't know, I did a video about my stint as a DJ. I went and did a guest disc jockey stint at 101.7 The Wall in Geneva, New York. And I brought my GoPro cameras and mounted them in the studio while I was on the air. And they had a microphone just like this, by the way. And I did a 5-hour shift of a classic rock station. And I filmed the whole thing. And then I went and just sliced it up and made like a 8 or 9 minute long video of it. So if you go into my channel and just search DJ or radio or something, you'll find it. And you'll see what it looks like for a disc jockey. And it looks a lot like what you're seeing right here, except that in front of me, instead of this computer screen being a picture of me, the computer screen is a list of songs and commercials. And at the end of the break, I reach down and click a mouse to start the next song. So it's a lot of fun because I had not been a DJ at a modern station like that because when I last DJ'd, I worked at a place that still plays CDs. So Bill Taylor says Geneva, New York is in the Finger Lakes area. Yes, it is. Lake Seneca. Beautiful lake right there. Neat little town. I actually spent a couple days in town and after the whoa, someone just pointed out there's a lot of people in the room. There's 921 people in the room. Is that right? Or have we been invaded by bots? That's another name for my indie rock group, Invaded by Bots. Or maybe the first album we put out. 938. Wow. Something crazy is happening. Daniel Kester, Steve, how bad was the reaction when you made a video about Pelosi ripping up the State of the Union address? The interesting thing was that did a very, very strong reaction very, very quickly, and then it fell off very quickly. And I think what happened was that in the immediate aftermath of it happening, people were looking for stories about it. And then I think so much stuff came out about it that YouTube stopped pushing it as a hot video. So it got close to 100,000 views, but not quite. We're at 960 in the room right now, 960. Wow. And Albert Buchheit suggests that you should hit that like button. By the way, Albert, do you pronounce the C? Is it Buchheit or Buchheit? How do you pronounce that? Just curious. Brianna CC, how do we double viewers in 10 minutes? We don't question these things, my friend. We simply enjoy them while they happen. Sarcastic scapegoat. Hey, Steve, have you ever been to Desert Valley Auto Parts in Arizona? No, I have not. Is that an outdoor, like a junkyard kind of place? Or is there something else special about it? I've not been out there. I've been to the nice junkyards in California. They've got some very nice junkyards in California where they've got just rows and rows of cars. It's self-serve. And they've got them sorted. I forgot where the one was that I went to, but they have them sorted by make. So if you were looking for Chevy parts, it'd be rows and rows of Chevys. You're looking for Pontiacs, rows and rows of Pontiacs. And because it's California, you'd find some very, very unusual stuff out there. So that was pretty cool. Went there with my brother a couple of times. Sarcastic Scapegoats is classic cars, 5,000 plus. Okay. Coiled Steel, Route 66. The Flobies is maybe it's a troll farm. None of your business. What's the greatest loss of innocence you've had as a lawyer? You mean the biggest disappointment about the legal system itself? I have, and the underlying story is too complicated to go into, but I had a case in particular where a client of mine and I were litigating in an attempt to get my client's car back. It's way too complicated to go into here. And I had a trial court judge who didn't care. And she's kind of like, why are you bringing a lawsuit in my courtroom involving a car? And in front of the Court of Appeals, we argued the same case. And I've told this story before, that the Court of Appeals is a panel of 3 you appear before, and it's got a recording system that you just press a button and it records, they press a button and it stops and you're off the record. And we had our oral arguments in front of the court, and the leading judge said, okay, we're off the record. And he went, boom, and he pressed the button and he goes, all this over a car? And he got up and he walked out. And the idea that judges, those 3 plus the trial court judges, before judges, when my client came to court in an attempt to get his car back and filed a lawsuit, and the other side litigated it vigorously, for the judges to look at it and go, it's just a car case. It's just a car case. And it's like, yeah, but it's some guy's car, and that car represents something to him. It's got a lot of value to him. It's got a lot of money that went into it. And the courts are supposed to respect our property rights. And the idea that it's just a car, to me, was mind-blowing. And I mean, I was flabbergasted. And it was one of those things where my client was in court. My client was at both of those hearings, the last hearing in front of the trial court judge and the Court of Appeals. My client saw the judge say that. And if he hadn't been there, I'd have a hard time telling him that the judge had said that. So that's one that really still bugs me to this day, and that's probably 15 years ago. So, Mike M., I see your WABX 99 bumper sticker behind you. We have a WABX 107.5 here in Evansville, Indiana. Yes, I know that. WABX was a album rock station in Detroit that was iconic. They were very, very well known. One of the first underground FM stations in America. And they evolved over time. They got bought by a corporation. I think Century Broadcasting owned them at one point in time. And then they had some financial troubles and ratings troubles because WLLZ signed on. So they got purchased by another company. They changed formats, but the guy who owned the company kept the call letters, and he parked them for a while. He didn't use them. And somewhere down the road, the station in Evansville got the rights to use the call letters WABX. Now, they're not at 99 FM, but they still use the neon logo. And I know that I remember doing research a while back, looking up WABX and reading about it, and seeing that the station in spirit still exists someplace, and that's pretty cool. WABX had a bunch of really cool stuff. Besides the bumper stickers, they called their air staff the Air Aces, and they had some really, really cool graphics. One of them they had was a pig smoking a joint, wearing a hat. This is WABX on it. Oh, boy. 5153 Flash, what do you think of Judge Judy? Judge Judy, haven't seen it in a long time. Haven't seen her in a long time or that show. I know she makes boatloads of money. And I know that it's evolved from when it first started, because you have to go back and think of the original People's Court with Judge Wapner. Time for Wapner. And when you go on to People's Court and watch the original Judge Wapner, he was just a guy who was a small claims court judge who was just really, really good at just boiling things down to the nitty gritty and making rulings. And the weird thing about Judge Judy is they discovered that the ratings went up when she was mean to people. And so she's yelling at people and calling them names, basically like wake up and smell the coffee kind of stuff. And I'm not too crazy about her because I personally like the judges who are a little bit more welcoming and are willing to listen to both sides, and make a good ruling. But, the problem is there's like 20 judge shows on TV and they come and go. Hers is stuck. I got to give her credit for that, but I'm not a huge fan. Well, like I said, I know she makes a lot of money. Raiderzilla, got to go back to work. You're one of the few people keeping the economy going, I guess. So good for you. Chili Finger points out I'm an excellent driver. You ever driven before? Yeah, Dad let me drive. I drove the car. Bill Van Ram says, I believe Judge Judy is getting cut. Well, no, she announced that she's starting her own production company. And I think she's going to pull an Oprah. Oprah Winfrey was on network television, syndicated by a syndication company. And at one point in time, her ratings dropped just enough to where they couldn't charge the syndication fees they used to. So she actually got out of that agreement, started her own syndication, and wound up on her own channel, believe it or not, the Oprah Winfrey Network. And my understanding is that Judge Judy's in kind of a similar situation in that she's decided to produce it herself and make it available herself and syndicate it herself. So the profit margins probably go up, but the reach of the company might not be as good as it is right now. So I don't know. I'm not even sure where she's on. I wouldn't be surprised if she's on network TV in my market, but I haven't watched it, other than, if I accidentally saw it out of the corner of my eye walking through a service department at a car dealership or something. Canadian Robot Lady says hello and thanks to Gilded Angels for giving her a shout out. And of course, Gilded Angels is another Canadian lady, just not a robot. The Seattle Cyclist. Hi, Steve, watching in Seattle. Thanks for checking in, my friend. I appreciate that. Jim Adams, flipping through the channels and saw Paternity Court. Bob, you are not the father. Yeah, and of course, Jerry Springer made a whole career out of that, where they'd bring in a woman with her baby, and she'd say, well, one of these three guys is the father, and I'm not sure who. And of course, that right there is racy in and of itself. And then they'd, of course, give them all paternity tests, but not reveal the results till they're all on TV. And, Jerry Springer dragged this out to be like a half hour long, so 22 minutes in, it's like, okay, contestant number one, you are not the father. And some guys on national TV jumping around like you just won the lottery, Now these other two guys are sweating a little harder. And you got to wonder, the mother's sitting over here with the baby going, it's like a contest and the loser gets me. So, boy. Kit Marlowe Scott says that okra fried is not slimy. I have to tell you, I have the okra seeds, and I bought them simply because I like the picture on the package, and I like the word okra. It's funny. But I jokingly said in the video, I don't even know what okra is. I know what it is, but it's a vegetable. It's more commonly known in the South. Okay, they cook more with it in the South. I may have had okra. I don't know. But if I did, it didn't make an impression on me in that sense. But I can tell you that I've had many people weigh in, and they say, Steve, okra is the greatest thing ever. Here's how you should prepare it. And I appreciate the effort. But like I said, the problem is that the okra is going to get shipped off to a farm down south where, where it'll get taken care of. Daniel Lemus says, Steve, you're thinking of Maury Povich. Didn't Jerry Springer also do it? Or was Maury the guy who did that? Quite frankly, all those shows blend together. It wouldn't surprise me if they all did it. But you're right. Maury Povich is the guy I'm picturing. I was just saying Jerry Springer. Pincushion Joe, hello from Salt Lake City, Utah. Tom Holt, okra is popular here in Florida. I hate that stuff. Muskogean says, if you've ever had gumbo, you've had okra. I'm not sure I've had gumbo. But gumbo does sound like something that would contain okra. David Woods is pickled okra. Okay. Robert Odell says, read the back of the seed pack, though. Now, that's funny. You know, dude, you're not the only person who said that. Several people tell me that perhaps the highlight of the video about shopping for seeds was me reading the description off the back. I'll give you a taste. Okra, go big. Towering plants produce a payload of big, luscious green pods ready to rock gumbos and stews with soul power, which has to be insulting to somebody. It takes full sun, 60 to 65 days to harvest at a depth of 1 inch, and you need to sow it in average, well-worked soil after all danger of frost. And they suggest you plant it in May or June. So there you go, my friends. Okra, the greatest hits. C Perceptions Music reminds us that Montel Williams is one who moved up close and knelt before the interview. Montel Williams. Oh, I forgot about him. Don't forget at one point in time he was a motivational speaker. And then he's also on late night television pitching high interest loans from Indian nations. Okay. David Swan, that was Maury Povich. Yes, several people have pointed it out. Thank you. Captain Lucky, didn't it just cross your mind to get some tomato seeds? You know, I actually looked for what I thought would be the best selection of goofy looking names and photographs. Paul Mataliano, Morton Downey Jr. was the original. The original what? Morton Downey Jr., for those who don't know, briefly had a talk show where he would chain smoke during the show and yell at people, call them names, and I'm talking the guests, and he would actually get in their faces and act like he's going to attack them and stuff. And the show had huge ratings for like 3 minutes. It was woo, and then right back down again. And the show got canceled. And right after it got canceled, he claimed he was attacked in an airport in Los Angeles by youths who shaved his head and drew a swastika on his forehead backwards. And of course, this all happened in a bathroom. And when the authorities investigated, they said, well, we're curious about that swastika being on backwards. Of course, that'd be frontwards if you're doing it in a mirror. And pretty much nobody believed the story. But if you're interested, look him up. There's actually a couple of documentaries about him. I watched them about 2 weeks ago. And he's just one of those tragic characters where he caught the public fascination for about, like I said, 15 seconds. So 5153 Flash, do you believe in Bigfoot? No. And it's kind of funny because I know there's people on the internet who are, Bigfoot, flat earth, name it, they're out there. But I've had a couple people get very angry at me for saying that I'm not a Bigfoot supporter. I didn't know he needed my vote, so I'm not really sure why I would need to support him. But I can tell you that there is little to zero evidence of Bigfoot's existence. And there would be more if he existed. And I've had people say, Steve, prove that planets exist. You have no evidence of a planet. I go, well, Earth, I'm standing on it. So, Captain Lucky, it's more fun to believe in Bigfoot. Yeah, you can believe in it if you want to, but you have to understand that your belief at that point is more faith, meaning it's based on not evidence, but on hope. Pollo Loco, I believe in unicorns, and I believe in crazy chickens. Austin Benesh says that's not what Netflix says about Bigfoot. My favorite misnamed TV show of all time. I've never watched the show more than 3 minutes, but Finding Bigfoot. They've found a 0 so far. They keep calling the show Finding Bigfoot. How do you call a show Finding Bigfoot when they've never found Bigfoot? Shouldn't you call it Not Finding Bigfoot? So, She Ruiz, why do you keep moving a $100 bill? That is a joke going back to the very, very early days of a bet I made where I said that the Supreme Court has never issued a ruling, so you don't need a driver's license. And people out there claim that there's a case. And I go, well, send it to me and I'll send you $100. And I showed it on camera and I said, I'll leave it back here until somebody wins it. And of course, nobody can win it. So it's become a permanent part of my display now. So it's basically that. Jim Adams, I found Bigfoot at a monster truck competition. Yeah, Bigfoot and Gravedigger. I went to a monster truck event in Flint, Michigan. I think it was at the IMA or whatever they call that thing now, the Dordt Federal Credit Union. And one of the monster trucks went out of control. And see, you have to remember, there's the big leagues of monster trucks, and then there's like the lesser leagues, the minor leagues. This was the minor leagues. There was no Gravedigger. There was no Bigfoot. And there was a guy driving a monster truck, and he jumped it over something, and it came down, and it broke something, and one of the front wheels went whoop, like this. I mean, it snapped something in the steering gear or something, you know? And as a result, the truck went and ran over the scorer's table. It's like 4 people at a table with computers and stuff, and they jumped out of the way. This thing ran them over. Now, the people didn't get hurt, but the table was destroyed. And I think the computers didn't survive either. It was the highlight of the show. So, none of your business is finding Bigfoot was named the same way fishing was named fishing and not catching. It is wishful thinking now that you pointed out. Thank you very much. Oh, boy. Jonathan Purdy, Bigfoot is fake, but Chupacabra is real. Yeah, Chupacabra would make more sense. It'd be a smaller animal that could stay, secluded for longer. But Ram 50 V8 says, Steve, Ben Franklin needs to try origami. I feel bad. Somebody in the very, very early days of my show sent me a book on money origami, how to take a dollar bill and fold it up and make like, a little swan or, whatever. And I never did because I don't want to damage the bill. But I could do with a smaller bill, I guess. But I did get the books. I appreciate that. Betty Anderson, Monster Truck versus Allman Brothers concert, which is louder? Oh, the Allman Brothers by far. Monster trucks aren't loud. If you want loud vehicles, you've got to go to the hydroplane races. In Detroit, they've got hydroplane races once a year on the Detroit River, assuming that the league still exists. I'm not sure they do anymore, but I know they did up until recently. And the unlimited hydroplanes are powered by huge, huge aircraft engines, jet engines, that are basically running at full throttle with nothing to keep them quiet. But instead of being up in the sky where they belong, they're on the surface of a river. And you've not heard anything that loud before if you're up close to them. Now, it depends on how close you are to them as to how loud they are. But the monster trucks weren't that terribly loud. But it's always fun to see, big vehicles and the cool things they do to modify them. Bill Taylor says the Thunderboats. That's a nickname for the unlimited hydroplanes. And Canadian Robot Lady says, Steve, you're a busy man. No time for money origami. Did I point to something? What? When? Now? Bill Taylor says the Packard V12s. Yeah, the V12s were the previous generation. And again, I'm going to show you my age. I was at some of the races where there's still V12s running against the jet engines. And that was a passing of an era because I think it was Miss Madison? The boat that was fielded by the city of Madison, Wisconsin. And I could be wrong, but I think that's it. And it was powered by one of the aircraft engines from World War II, a V12 engine. And in fact, that's one of the uses those engines were put to when the war ended. Guys bought up those surplus engines and put them in boats. And the idea that you're running that much horsepower into a prop is crazy. But then step it up a notch and put a jet engine on it. So unbelievable. I actually saw races on the Detroit River when I was in, I'm guessing, elementary school. My brother Ken. There were places down in Detroit. You can just walk up the edge of the river and just watch the race. And you can get tickets and sit in the stands if you want to, but you don't need to. So it's pretty cool. Sea Perceptions Music. Steve, ever been to Seafair in the 90s? I'm not sure what that is, so the answer would have to be no. Daniel Kester says tractor pulls where the tractors pull against other tractors or even against the sleds. Those would have to be loud. Those would be loud. Bill Taylor, Miss Budweiser. Yeah, Miss Budweiser and the Miss US were two of the big boats, the more winning boats. There was a time when it was Miss US, Miss Budweiser, and Atlas Van Lines with Bill Muncie at the wheel. And those three would be battling for supremacy, but they're in a sport that required so much money that it was not uncommon there'd be 2 or 3 boats that would run away with it. And you'd actually see in a 5-lap race people being lapped, which shouldn't actually happen, but they felt bad. They wanted to let everyone run. And there's also the weird thing, if you don't know about this, about boat racing, is on a race like the Gold Cup when they have it in Detroit with the Unlimiteds, is there's a big clock thing and it's a big circle, and it's got a hand that goes around like this. And what happens is when they're about to start the race, because it's not a dead stop start, it's a flying start. What they do is they say there's a starting line here, and you cannot cross it before the thing goes all the way around. The second it goes all the way around, you can cross it. So the trick is to line up back here and try to floor it, hit it just as the thing clicks. And if you go over too soon, that's not right. But if you're too far back and somebody else is farther up and they time it just right, they get a jump on you. So there is a little bit of that going on. And I'm not sure how they do it today, but when I saw it, they always had that big clock thing. And these guys are in boats that go insanely fast. It's extremely rough. And they're trying to watch that and time it. And, so it was a lot of excitement. But, Bob Bong, the funny one is the Ms. Oh Boy Oberto. And that's another one of the ones that was in there for quite a long time with the sponsor. Jim Adams, aren't those boat races the ones where the boat hits a little wave and flips over about 100 times? Kind of. Now, the unlimited hydroplanes do flip occasionally, and that's not good. But what happens is the hydroplanes have sponsons up front, and the sponsons are almost like, imagine a snowmobile with the runners, the skis up front. But a boat with those, and what's happening is as the boat gets pushed faster and faster, the sponsons get the front end, so the boat's barely touching the water in the front. And if you're doing it right, you've got the sponsons in the front and the propeller in the back pushing it. And that's pretty much all that's touching the water. But there's so much air underneath the boat lifting it up that if you hit a little bump and get too much air or a wind gust, the boat will do this. And you can go on the internet and find millions of videos about the boats going up, and they do this. And guys get killed. And one of the years I was at the race, the Gold Cup races in Detroit, saw three boats flip where they had to be dragged, because you can't flip a boat back over out in the water. The boat flips and they got to tow it back in and then, restart the race or whatever they got to do. And the guys now are in fully enclosed cockpits. It's the equivalent of like the cockpit you have in a fighter jet. So if it flips, they're okay under there for a little bit and then get pulled out. But in the old days, guys got killed. I mean, Bill Muncie got killed boating. He was in a different kind of a boat. But even crazier are the little drag boats. They've got smaller hydroplanes that are designed to launch from a dead start, just like at a drag strip, but on water. And you'll see those things. And even the ones, they also have Grand Prix type, with little boats racing around like this. You'll see those things wipe out also. It's crazy. I personally think the guys who get into the funny cars and the rails on the 1,000-foot dragways and do 3-second quarter miles are insane. It's even crazier to be doing that in a boat, even if you got the full cockpit, because it can change just like that. Captain Lucky, if it moves, someone is racing it. I assure you, absolutely. That's what they tell you. First time there were 2 cars, first race. So, Terrell Cockrum, was it not Mrs. Poppy that was the first with a cockpit canopy? I do not know. Jason Carter, love your videos. I appreciate you and the information you provide. Thank you. Gypsy Salami, French jet, 64-year-old accidentally ejects. I saw that. Some guy was being taken for a ride on a jet. And that happens. I know journalists who've been offered a ride with the Blue Angels. Do you want to go up and be in a jet with a Blue Angel doing this kind of stuff? And some people can't handle it. And so this guy gets on board the plane and somehow accidentally ejected. I assume there's a big button right here that says do not push. But I just saw the headline go by and I read like the first 2 or 3 sentences like, whoa. Coiled Steel and Bella are discussing the relative merits of the loudness of the SR-71 Blackbird and the U-2 spy plane, both of which probably had to make a mighty racket upon takeoff. But of course, most civilians wouldn't have known about it because they're taking off from very, very remote locations. I read a great book. If you haven't read it and you're interested in those things, check out the book. I believe it's called Skunk Works by a guy named Rich, I believe. Last name Rich. And he worked for the Skunk Works, which is the people who built the U-2 and the Blackbird. And he talks all about the engineering that went into the technology, some of the inside stories that didn't get publicized till much, much later. And he was there. And it's a fascinating story because the Skunk Works was a nickname of the organization. I think it was within Lockheed. And they basically got government contracts to build top secret stuff. And it was almost always espionage related. And the U-2 spy plane and the SR-71 Blackbird, 2 technological wonders that were the result of that project or that department. And the technology they got, Buff Del Campos is Ben Rich, is the name of the man who wrote the book. And The Van Caves is an amazing book. There you go. It's astounding, the technology that went into it. And, it cost a fortune. I mean, it was money. It cost a lot of money. But some of the stuff those things did was just crazy. Scott Denning says, Kelly Johnson. Kelly Johnson was one of the head guys at Lockheed. I believe he may have been Ben Rich's boss. Ram 50 V8 says, yes, it was Lockheed. Song Yardbird, did you ever hang glide? No, I never did. My brother had a motorized hang glider as well as just a typical old Rogallo wing hang glider, the Delta that he flew. But he also had a motorized one. I never got a chance to do that. Never really pursued it, but I'm aware of it. It does look like a lot of fun. So, Matthew Showstrom, Steve, hypothetically, if a Bigfoot was found next week, how would you feel and what would you do? Apologize to it? I don't know. No, I'd be excited. I would be excited. I think everybody would like to see that there actually is something like that. We like to think there's possibility that we don't know everything, right? So if somebody said, hey, Steve, we caught a baby Loch Ness monster, and we've caught one. And, biologists have come and looked at it and confirmed, yes, previously unknown to man, full grown, this thing could be a Loch Ness monster. I would be amazed. I'd be happy. And the thing is that if they found a Bigfoot, they said, look, we caught this thing. There it is. Biologists have come in and looked at it, confirmed this thing is previously unknown to the science. It does live someplace in America, whether it's Boggy Creek or the Great Northwest, but it lives someplace. And the only question I would have then is I'd be curious. I would then want to ask the biologists, how is it you guys didn't know about this before now? Like in other words, how did it get to this point now? And there's a possibility. I'm sure you might remember probably about 10, 15 years ago now, but there was an island in like Indonesia or some place in that part of the world where there was a mountain that had never been explored before, as far as they know. And some guys went up there and they discovered that in this one area that nobody had ever visited before, at least no biologists or botanists. And they found all kinds of things that were totally unknown to science. It was like the Garden of Eden, okay? And the point is that nobody had been there before, and that made complete sense. We understand that. It's very rare that somebody finds something in plain sight and goes, how come we never saw that before? And so most of America, and I'm talking about even up into the Canadas and the Mexicos, most of this area has been explored at one time or another. It'd be very, very hard to explain how a population of these things lived here without being spotted before. So that'd be the big question. But I wouldn't be offended. I wouldn't be like, oh no, they're lying. I'd be fascinated. I for one would welcome our new Bigfoot overlords. John Linkvist says, why have the Bigfoot experts not tried using Jack Link's jerky to lure him out? I assume that's a licensing deal. MH08, Bigfoot hangs out with a Geico caveman. Didn't they do a Geico caveman sitcom for like 1 or 2 episodes that just flopped? I have a very, very faint memory of that somewhere. Lee Maynard, Steve, would you like to visit the other Scandinavian countries as well as Finland? Oh, I'd love to. I like to travel. I've been a lot of places, not a lot of places, but for an American, I've been to a lot of places. But I would love to see Norway, Sweden, Finland, other places in mainland Europe. I've been to France and Switzerland, never been to Germany, Netherlands, Russia. I'd love to go to those places. The problem with travel, of course, it just takes so much time and it costs money. So I'm not sure if I'll ever get a chance to. I would love to go to Finland, but I need to go to somebody. I'm sorry. I'll put these back. I need to go to Finland with somebody who speaks Finnish. I'm too paranoid about my lack of being able to speak Finnish. I got some good friends who speak Finnish, so maybe when they go, I'll go with them. Song Yardbird, unfrozen caveman, a lawyer with a big cell phone. I don't know much about your modern society or how airplanes fly or what this thing is or where the voices come from, but I do know that my client's entitled to $1.29 million in compensatory damages and $3.4 million in punitive damages. Tom Holt, it's amazing to see an SR-71 Blackbird in person. Engines are huge, really long. They have one at the Air and Space Museum near Dulles. I've never seen SR-71 Blackbird in person, but that's the plane that flies so fast and it actually encounters so much resistance to the air going over the skin that it gets hot. And they actually had to calculate how much it would expand when in flight. So they actually decided that it was more important for it to have the structural integrity in flight than it was when it was parked at room temperature, in essence. So when you take an SR-71 Blackbird and roll it out on the tarmac and fuel it up, it might leak because you got to get it going fast enough till all the metal expands and tightens everything up. Just a crazy idea, but it works. Holly D says, hi from Holly in England. Is Holly the location or your name? There is a town in Michigan. I had like 6 different ideas occur at the exact same time. But one of the cool things about the U-2 and the SR-71 is they flew at such a high altitude that by the time we were overflying something, the people down on the ground, even if they knew it was there, couldn't do anything about it. Because to get from the ground to 70,000 feet takes some time. So we had cameras that were so good that we could fly over at that height in good weather. We could take photographs of, something this big on the ground and know what it was. But it was great. People are now saying there's a glitch of some sort. Uh-oh. The Seattle Cyclist, what's your favorite bike? I've got a couple mountain bikes right now. I do not have a road bike. Now, several people are saying they're having problems with the technicalities. Nothing's changed here. So, Duncan Campbell says he refreshed and things started working again. Amateur shooter, Steve doesn't know he froze in mid-answer. Sorry. Oh, I don't know how to, I can only control so much. And don't know what else I can do. Yeah, Douglas Bustle, U-2 has shot down Gary Powers in Russia. And there's a whole story about that. And they talk about that in the book about the Skunk Works. about, one did get shot down. It's a very, very freakish thing on how it got shot down. And it was crazy. But yeah, Gary Powers survived. And then I believe we had to trade somebody for him. And one of those things. So, yeah, several people now said I dropped out for about 30 seconds, and I apologize. There's not much I can do, though, as far as that goes. Harry Hodge says it's back, loss of signal momentarily, probably the ISP. It could be, but you'll recall that, I've mentioned this before, I do these shows on a dedicated laptop, and I've got my camera running into the laptop, and I've got the laptop running directly into a cable box with a hard line. It is an actual wire that goes in. I tried using a Wi-Fi connection at one point in time, but the Wi-Fi connection did not work, did not have enough bandwidth. So I now use the hardline cable, and that appears to solve most of it. Buff Del Campos says Gary Powers wrote a book. It doesn't surprise me. And Lewis Ludham just mentioned, I was going to say this, Gary Powers died while flying in a traffic helicopter in California. Gary Powers, after that incident, became a traffic reporter in a helicopter in Los Angeles, I believe. So, Stephen Baines says, Steve, can we shout out to the audience? Everyone is nice and proper, no cursing. Just a pleasant place to spend time and sit around, and I appreciate that all around. And you are absolutely right. We have not had any bot invasions today, as far as I know. And we had a couple people, I think, who got muted, but nothing major. Buddy Weiser asks a question I answered in tomorrow's video, but since you haven't seen it yet, I'll have to tell you. How can a law be enforced when it's not in the books? Governor's stay-at-home order. What law is broken and how is it recorded in court? Buddy Weiser, my friend, if you were to read the statute or the law that you'd be accused of breaking is MCL 10.31. And that is the Emergency Powers of the Governor Act. And breaking that law is a misdemeanor. So that's what would happen is you'd be brought into court and they'd say the charge against you is violating the Emergency Powers Act. How do you plead? You plead not guilty. They would then bring in the witnesses to say how you broke the order. And if you got found guilty, you were just convicted of a misdemeanor. So that's how it works. But I explain it in more detail in the thing. By the way, I forgot to mention, I got in the mail the other day an Ike dollar. Someone mailed me an Ike dollar. And I got the envelope and I'm shaking it going, it feels like there's something in there. Hi, Steve. I was watching your live video in which you were discussing the coolness of the reverse of the Ike dollar, which is the eagle landing on the moon. The bicentennial Ike is equally cool with the Liberty Bell and the moon. It exemplifies what 200 years of freedom can achieve. Eisenhower is possibly the most successful man of the 20th century, 5-star general, supreme commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force in the greatest war ever, president of Columbia University, and president of the U.S., and, of course, a member of the Augusta National Golf Course. And, of course, he warned us, we didn't listen, but he warned us about the military-industrial complex. You probably already have a bicentennial Ike, but I sent one along just in case. Sorry, it is not a silver one. Love your videos. Go Pioneers, which is a reference to the school that I attended as a young man, my undergraduate. I was attending Oakland University, and apparently so was Irv, who sent me this. So, Irv, thank you for the letter. I'm glad I saw that, too. And this, of course, is what he's referring to is a bicentennial Ike dollar, which came out in 1976. And you flip it over on the back, and it's got the Liberty Bell and the moon as opposed to the eagle and the moon. I guess it's probably better in focus back here, right? So that would be the Ike dollar. I will put the Ike dollar in a prominent place behind me before the next video gets recorded. So, Stephen Baines, me fail English, that impossible. It's a Simpsons reference. Scotty Beam, did anybody get their check yet? I'm curious. I've heard from people who did get it. I also saw a thing on the Daily Mail about a guy who had $8 million deposited into his account by accident, but they took it back out before he could get it. So typical government. Who knows what's going to happen? Somebody asked, is this all silver? No, this is a clad. It's a clad. Anything 1965 or forward is clad, although there are still some coins that had a higher concentration of silver in them, but this is just a typical clad 1976. So, and by the way, if you were around in 1976, you remember that the bicentennial was a big deal. Everything was bicentennial. Get bicentennial potato chips, bicentennial clothing, Evel Knievel, the stars and stripes and all that stuff he wore was in style for 1 year, the bicentennial. Crispy Spa says, my check is pending in my checking account. Space Raptor says, got mine yesterday. Dwayne Buck, mine will deposit tomorrow. And so that's basically what's going on, is that people are saying that the deposit is there. In other words, it was electronically put into their bank account, and then it'll clear whenever your bank clears it, as if they're clear. The bank needs to determine if, in fact, the government's good for it. Somebody asked about the size of this dollar. I can tell you that the Ike dollar is this big, and next to a Walking Liberty half, there's a dimensional thing for you. Okay, so there we go, right there. Walking Liberty half is here because I just can't put it away. I love looking at it. The Van Cave, Spirit of 76 and USA #1 was everywhere. I mean, I remember people painting their cars red, white, and blue. I'm not kidding you. I mean, I'm pretty certain some car companies made that available as a color option. And don't get me wrong, I love our flag, but there are some things that don't look good painted red, white, and blue. It's got to be done right. You know what I'm saying? Stephen Baines, is it hypocritical to hate on socialism and still take the stimulus money? The problem is that most people don't know what socialism actually is. So Buddy Weiser says most will be deposited tomorrow. And that appears to be the situation with the electronic deposits. People who mail in returns with actual checks because they owe money. Who knows when they will see theirs? We'll see. Don Jackson, I was 2 in 76. So you wouldn't remember this, would you? I bet you don't. Oh, Matatoire, pending for 415 on mine. The Van Cave, I had a bicentennial Huffy. And see, that's the thing. You could get like a bicentennial Spirit of America bike, or skateboard or Frisbee or you name it. And I would love to find like a Montgomery Ward's catalog from 1976. I assure you, it's just wall-to-wall gaudiness of just hideous, ugly things that might be considered kind of cool and campy now, but they would not have been considered cool and campy in like 1977. MH08. What was the food during the moonshots? Space Sticks and Tang. Tang, oh my gosh. Tang was this orange drink. I know you can still buy it, but Tang was like this orange drink. It's like Kool-Aid. And for some odd reason, they marketed it and said it was healthy for you. And they actually got somehow the people at NASA to say the astronauts drank Tang. And if you look up Tang right now on the internet, you'll find that, number one, it's generally derided as being nothing but sugar water. And number two, I think it was Buzz Aldrin who said Tang sucks. To rip a page from Rain Man. Kmart sucks. Tang sucks. I think that's what he said. So, Joel Kirschman, NASA or Nassau? And the funny thing is, no matter how I say it, people say I'm saying it wrong. I purposely said NASA. And people go, oh, Steve, it's not Nassau. I didn't say Nassau. I said NASA. Was it NASA or NASA? It's a pet peeve of mine. I don't mind being corrected when I'm incorrect. I do mind being corrected when I'm correct. Yeah, most doctors prefer Camel. Dennis Barabeau points out there was a time when they used to actually advertise that cigarettes are good for you. Jeff Buffington, you can still buy Tang. Yeah, you could. Why? Oh boy. Joel Kirschman, have you ever been incorrect? Oh, I misspeak all the time. And I admit that if I say something wrong. But the funny part about it is that I have a Midwestern accent, which is actually considered to be the thing you want to have when you're in broadcasting. And when I say NASA, or I'll say something's NASA, people will go nuts. It's not NASA, it's NASA. And of course, since you're typing it, I can't say whether or not you're saying it right. But people always go, it's NASA, not NASA, WWWW. And I don't say NASA, I say NASA. But the point is, it's an abbreviation. Who's to say how it's pronounced? You know? I mean, it's an abbreviation. NASA. It's an abbreviation. So to suggest that an abbreviation has a correct way of being pronounced as opposed to something else is actually a stretch. Fjord, how do you say aluminum? I say aluminum the American way. Aluminium, of course, is sometimes acceptable in Britain and Australia, I believe. But aluminum is how it's pronounced in America and also spelled here. I remember having an argument with somebody a long, long time ago, back in the days before the internet, where a friend of mine was in a band called Aluminum Beach. If you were in Ann Arbor between 1980 and 84, you may have heard Aluminum Beach play at Joe's Star Lounge. And I remember talking to somebody and they said, why do you guys spell it that way? And they spelled it aluminum. And he goes, well, how else could you spell it? He goes, aluminium. We'd never heard of that before. But that was a long time ago. So there you go. Tyrone Bigham says the Nebraska flat accent is what the networks used to like. Yeah, and it's a Midwestern thing. It's a Midwestern accent. So, you know, they used to avoid the heavy New England type accents, the heavy Southern drawls and so on. But it's getting now more and more where they'll allow people who've got accents as long as they don't sound stupid. I mean, I've heard people in the media who sound stupid. Don't get me wrong, but oh, Matthew Shostrom. Can you explain gray versus gray? Yeah, Grey is considered sexier. 50 Shades of. No, I don't know. I have no idea. I don't think there is a difference. I think it's literally an acceptable, which is whichever you prefer, alternate spellings. Chevy Mustang claims it's snowing again in Bay City. Is it really? I got my curtains are closed. I can't see what's doing outside. But that's too bad. Take a stride or step aside says, I'm a Michiganian, as am I. I hate the phrase Michigander. I think it's stupid, but some people like it. John Tong points out that Tang, ironically, is a great cleaner for dishwashers. Dump a small jar in during the wash cycle. I've heard people say that. In fact, Glenn Hagee, who's no longer with us, but Glenn Hagee was the home improvement guy here in Michigan, had a radio show for years on WJR and WXYT. And Glenn Hagee said that also, and said that if you wanted to, you run Tang through your dishwasher and it cleans the dishwasher. And so it really makes you wonder whether you should be drinking the stuff or not. But, you know, another thing altogether. Canadian Robot Lady points out that the American and the British might be the gray distinction. I'm not sure about that, but it would make sense. Like labor, O-U-R, somebody else pointed out. So... Cheesy Wheeler, did you ever watch The Sheik on the Detroit Wrestling? Of course, long time ago. I was very, very young. The Sheik and Dick the Bruiser, of course, who became more famous when somebody started imitating him on a rock and roll morning show. But back when wrestling was really, really silly, but also really, really local. And The Sheik. So there you go. Bella Catoots, Mitch Ryder or the MC5? You know, I'll admit I'm not a big fan of either one of them. I mean, I'm familiar with both of them, but I don't own any MC5 or Mitch Ryder music. I do have the MC5 shirt, which I wear occasionally. And Mitch Ryder, you know, was also an iconic guy in the Detroit music scene. Both of them are very well known and very well respected musicians. Both Mitch Ryder and the band MC5. But, you know, so Buddy Weiser, did you ever use a D104 yourself? The lollipop right there. No, I did not. I bought that one off of eBay just for show. I think it looks cool. I know people who did use it in the CB days and the ham radio days as well. Digger 96 says, I grew up in the UP and we always said Michigander. Never heard Michiganian. Yeah, no, that's true. And it's a common thing people would say until you ask somebody, how do you get Michigander out of Michigan? Is somebody from Wisconsin, Wisconsinder? So. Lloyd Dragonforce, you still there? Thought they'd cart you out of jail for buying seeds. I'm going to go down in history as a great civil rights warrior. When they take me off to jail, I'm going to hold up the handcuffs and chains and talk about how I'm doing this all for the Constitution. Johnny Knoxville, Wisconsinite, yeah, or Michiganite. It makes more sense than Michigander. So. She Ruiz asked about the Ultimate Warrior or Rey Mysterio Jr. See, again, I don't know. I'm assuming there's later issues. Never watched Big Time Wrestling after that. Johnny Knoxville, is it illegal to watch Leto's Law in Michigan? 90 knots. You don't say Oregonder. That's the example I've often thought of before. Oregonian is, I believe, the accepted demonym, and so Michiganian would make sense as well. Amateur shooter are Canada geese from Canada. Part of the year they are. Although a lot of Canada geese stop over in Michigan and just stay here all summer. But they have a migration route that's generally from Canada to, I think, Mexico, or South America someplace. And then they may not go so far north, or they may not go so far south. Some of those routes are seasonal, and with changing temperatures, they might change. So I can tell you that one of the first things I watch from the spring, besides the geese returning, is sandhill cranes. Sandhill cranes show up in Michigan right around the same time. I saw 2 sandhill cranes yesterday. I was driving around, and I saw out in the field 2 goats and 2 sandhill cranes. And the goats were inside of an enclosure, and the cranes had joined the goats. They could get in and out, I suspect, if they wanted to. But they were grazing. I saw these 2 goats and 2 sandhill cranes. And sandhill cranes are cool. They're about this tall standing on the ground. They're really, really cool birds. So Joel Kirschman says there's an actual list of official state demonyms per the United States Government Publishing Office. And I know that up until recently, it was still considered a toss-up as to what Michigan's official position was on this. But in the last year or two, a bill did get passed that referenced us as Michiganders, which I think is a crying shame. But I'm one of these people who, I don't care what you say, I refuse to say it. So, Lee Maynard, who do you think was better, Thin Lizzy or Deep Purple? This is a tough call because Thin Lizzy in America had a couple songs that got radio play, and so did Deep Purple. And I think Deep Purple was a little bit heavier sounding, but I like Thin Lizzy's Whiskey in the Jar better than anything that Deep Purple did. So I got to go with that. In fact, I got that song on my phone. So it's one of my go-to songs I'm running, believe it or not. Oh boy. Jerry C says Deep Purple all the way. Sammy Gutierrez says, I'd love to be a Texandarian. A Texandarianite. Grape Knee-High. Somebody's mentioned Grape Knee-High a couple times. Jeff Buffington says Whiskey in the Jar is a Metallica song. Well, they covered it also. It's actually a earlier song. And for Thin Lizzy, it was also a cover song, I believe. So you want to check out Thin Lizzy's version, because I think it's actually better than Metallica's version. Metallica does their own thing with it, but I like Thin Lizzy's version better. Amateur shooters to Steve won't talk 2A, the Second Amendment. Yeah, no, you want something? Unfortunately, if I get involved in that, we'll go off the rails. No one will agree with anyone, and we won't move the ball down the field, to use one of my favorite cliches. Oh boy. Gypsy Salami, why no more gift openings? I used to bring in my mail in here and open it on the air. And although some people really liked it, those videos got almost no views. It just seemed really self-indulgent for me to be sitting in here opening up gifts like it was Christmas. But whenever someone sends me something cool like the Ike dollar I got here, I will bring it out and show it to you during one of these live feeds. So the live streams will basically take over for that. Albert Buchheit, we're going to end on this note. It says gray with an E is British English. Gray with an A is American English. So there you go. And Bill Taylor asks, is it soda or is it pop? Obviously it's pop because I'm from Michigan. There you go. That's going to wrap it up. We've been on for over an hour and a half as always. Today's Tuesday, so I'll see you again on Thursday. Same time, same place, same bat channel. Until then, behave yourself. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.